Hello, and here's what's coming up on the world today. United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres tells Israel escalation not the answer. Welcome back. Earlier today, a funeral procession was held for two Palestinians killed by Israeli security forces. According to Israel's military, they were suspected of carrying out shooting attack against police earlier this week. Israeli forces raided the occupied West Bank town of Nablus, the military said, and both terrorists were killed following an exchange of fire. The official Palestinian news agency Wafa said Israeli troops had cordoned off a house where the two had holed up and that they had been executed. It reports that the clashes with residents later broke out. Friday's raid into Nablus followed a two-day Israeli operation earlier this week in the densely populated Jenin refugee camp in the West Bank, which has been a flashpoint in a wave of Israeli-Palestinian violence that has convulsed the West Bank for more than a year. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says he understands Israel's legitimate concerns over its security, but escalation is not the answer. Mr. Guterres told reporters after an Israeli military operation in Jenin refugee camp that he described as the worst violence in the West Bank in many years. According to him, the use of airstrikes is inconsistent with the conduct of law enforcement operations.
I strongly condemn all acts of violence against civilians, including acts of terror. Israel's airstrikes and ground operations in a crowded refugee camp were the worst violence in the West Bank in many years, with a significant impact on civilians, including more than 100 injured and thousands forced to flee. Schools and hospitals were damaged, water and electricity networks were disrupted, and people in need were prevented from accessing essential care and relief. All those injured must have access to medical care, and humanitarian workers must be able to reach everyone in need. I once again call on Israel to abide by its obligations under international law, including the duty to exercise restraint and use only proportional force, and the duty to minimize damage and injury and respect and preserve human life. The use of airstrikes is inconsistent with the conduct of law enforcement operations. I also remind Israel, as the occupying power, that it has a responsibility to ensure that the civilian population is protected against all acts of violence. I understand Israel's legitimate concerns with its security, but escalation is not the answer. It simply bolsters radicalization and leads to a deepening cycle of violence and bloodshed. Restoring the hope of the Palestinian people in a meaningful political process, leading to a two-state solution and the end of the occupation, is an essential contribution by Israel to its own security.
At least 6 people have died and 81 others have been taken to hospital after a fire broke out in a room in a retirement home in the Italian city of Milan. The alarm was raised in the early hours of today at the Casa dei Coniugi home for the elderly. The blaze was quickly contained, but Milan Mayor Giuseppe Sala said rescuers had to bring everyone out almost one by the arm. However, he said it could have been worse, even as all the evidence pointed to the fire taking hold in one room where 2 women had been living. They were killed by the fire, he said, while the 4 other deaths were caused by smoke inhalation. According to local media, 5 of the 6 victims were women. And 18 people have been taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries after a double-decker tour bus collided with a New York City commuter bus in Manhattan. According to the city's fire department, the front windows of a double-decker top-view tour bus were shattered in the collision with the rear of a bus operated by the Metropolitan Transportation Authority at 1st Avenue and 23rd Street on the east side of Manhattan. Both buses are said to have been crowded, according to New York Fire Department officials who briefed reporters, and another 63 people were evaluated by medical staff at the scene. Our Washington, D.C. correspondent Maria Bird joins me now for more on that incident. Hi, Maria. Talk to us about this incident, two buses colliding. How did this happen?
This was an incident that's very unlikely in the city. Those who are familiar with that area in New York City, it's pretty congested. There are a lot of buses that go in and out of that area on a very regular basis. The buses that are in and out of that area are typically going at a very slow pace just because of where it's located in the city, and it's right there kind of where you enter the city. So this is not what you would typically see on an everyday basis in New York City, just because of kind of the traffic flow in that area.
So pretty much bizarre. This is not a common accident in such an area.
Not a common accident at all. No, it's not. Yes, definitely
Do we know
not.
if the drivers were under the influence? Are those who were on the bus passengers? Are they saying anything about this?
Well, they're definitely the spokesperson for the Port Authority. Obviously, is going to be working with local authorities to do a further investigation. But there has not been any type of allegations or thoughts around or discussions around being under the influence at this time. But I'm sure we will definitely find out additional information. But when you talk about those double-decker buses, there have been some safety concerns by the Port Authority in regards to those as well.
What kind of safety concerns?
Concerns around being able to ensure that those who are driving the bus are aware of the number of passengers. Oftentimes they're very full, a little bit more than what the Port Authority would be considered to be safe. We also know that sometimes many of these buses are not within compliance of the regulatory and have definitely been brought up in various cases previously, and many of those buses have been decommissioned. So I know all of that's going to go into consideration as a part of the investigation.
It was also said that it appeared that both buses were overcrowded.
Yes, and that's one of the larger pieces that is a concern with double-decker buses and specific bus services in New York City. The ones typically that go up and down the Eastern Corridor, which would be from Boston to Washington, oftentimes are over capacity in the limitations that the Transportation Department puts in place.
But the good thing we're hearing is no life-threatening injuries from those who were in the bus, about over 80, we believe.
Yes. So when you talk about those number of individuals, as you said, to not have life-threatening injuries, just goes to also show you that the level of speed that a driver could be going inside New York City is very minimal. So the level of impact on the passengers would also be decreased, and which would lead to some injury, but as you stated before, none life-threatening injuries.
Thanks, Maria, for that update. Our Washington, D.C. correspondent, Maria Bird there.
Thank you.
Well, let's move on to Spain, where Zaragoza town is battling impact of recent heavy rainfall, leaving main streets flooded. Eyewitness video showed people looking at water rushing rapidly down the street in Zaragoza and vehicles submerged in water. Police warned residents to avoid unnecessary travel and not to drive through flooded areas. Heavy rain with hailstones was seen in another video from Zaragoza in northeastern Spain. Member states of the UN Security Council have made a case for the deployment of a multinational force to Haiti. And this came after UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres appealed the international community to act now. Mr. Guterres visited Haiti's capital on Saturday, the 1st of July, saying the international aid has not met the impoverished country's growing humanitarian needs and urged more support for the Haitian police to fight gangs. The UN chief 9 months ago proposed that one or more nations send a rapid action force to support Haiti's security services. No such force has yet been deployed, as no country has stepped up to take the lead.
The provisional agenda for this meeting is the question concerning Haiti. The agenda is adopted.
The Secretary General met with Prime Minister Ariel Henry, the High Transitional Council, a cross-section of the political parties and civil society organizations. He impressed upon all the need to move forward with dialogue and his unwavering support for the deployment of a robust international force to assist the Haitian National Police. As part of the Haitian political dialogue, I want to highlight, while the political transition and the fight against gangs should remain on separate tracks, the two are inextricably linked. Improved security and continuous political dialogue would bring about the possibility to hold elections, a critical step on the path to reestablishing democratic institutions and elected officials at all levels of government.
We have noted the Haitian government request for security support to address the urgent and deteriorating security situation. We therefore underscore the urgency of pursuing multinational security efforts with the appropriate jurisdictional mandate aimed at restoring peace and stability in Haiti.
The Haitian government and its people have asked for international support for our help. The United States continues to work with a growing number of international partners to support the urgent security needs in Haiti. For these reasons, and as Secretary General Guterres requested most recently during his trip to Haiti on July 1 and reiterated today, the United States supports the deployment of a multinational force to Haiti to help its police restore security.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has called for market reforms in China and is urging direct lines of communication for the healthy development of bilateral economic and trade ties between the two nations. Ms. Yellen, who arrived Beijing on Thursday, spoke at a meeting with U.S. companies doing business in China, adding that regular exchanges could help both countries monitor economic and financial risks. Her trip is part of a flurry of visits aimed at calming tensions between Washington and Beijing that escalated after the U.S. military shot down a Chinese government balloon over the United States and amid increasing strains over export controls.
We believe that it's in the best interest of both countries to make sure we have direct and clear lines of communication at senior levels. In the economic realm, regular exchanges with our Chinese counterparts can help us monitor economic and financial risks, and it can help create the conditions for a healthy economic relationship between our two countries. I also think that a shift toward market reforms would be in China's interests. A market-based approach helped spur rapid growth in China and helped lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. It is a remarkable economic success story. I've made clear that the United States does not seek a wholesale separation of our economies. We seek to diversify and not to decouple. The decoupling of the world's two largest economies would be destabilizing for the global economy, and it would be virtually impossible to undertake.
About our economic policy at Johns Hopkins.
And now to New Zealand, where Prime Minister Chris Hipkins says his country will require continued engagement with China, its largest trading partner, and that tough conversations with Beijing is better than none at all. Mr. Hipkins said New Zealand will continue to disagree with China on several issues, including human rights, but the path of engagement will be open and honest. New Zealand has long been seen as a moderate or even absent voice on China and the Five Eyes intelligence sharing alliance, which includes the United States and allies, and is carefully managing its relationship with China amid the strategic rivalry that's between Beijing and Washington.
It's obvious New Zealand and China hold a number of different views. We don't share the same democratic tradition that we do with other partners like Australia, the UK or the US. And our differing positions on human rights is also an area of disagreement. In global affairs, we've voiced concerns about China's more assertive posture on a range of issues. But in this regard, we have a choice, and as a government, we've chosen the path of open and honest engagement. A strong, mature, and complex relationship means that we will have those tough conversations, just as I also raised areas of disagreement with the Chinese leadership when I was in Beijing last week. But I think it's better to be having those conversations than not. Dialogue delivers greater security. New Zealand's national interests require continued engagement with China and cooperation where our interests converge. It's important to stress at this point, independent doesn't mean neutral. As a country, we may be small, but we are not bystanders. We chart our own course with decisions that are in our national interest.
We're in Africa, where there seems to be heavy police presence around Nairobi, capital of Kenya, and other major towns, as opposition supporters are expected to hold demonstrations protesting the high cost of living. Protests have already been reported in several places, including Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kisumu, where police have used tear gas to disperse crowds. Local media say that several businesses have been vandalized by demonstrators in Kisumu, and there have been confrontations between police and demonstrators in several parts of Nairobi. And a busy highway leading to the city was also blocked earlier this morning. Opposition leader Raila Odinga is scheduled to speak at a major political rally in the capital later, where many believe he will announce the resumption of weekly nationwide protests. The authorities have allowed the rally go ahead, but caution against protesters going into Nairobi's city centre. Well, thousands of South Sudanese braved afternoon rain to attend a much-publicized cultural festival where speakers encourage peace as being everyone's responsibility, while at the same time calling on all to desist from hate speech. Drawn from diverse ethnic groups gathered for songs and dance, this festival is part of a year-long Peace Begins With Me campaign launched by the United Nations mission in South Sudan this year. As dark rain clouds gathered over the grounds of Queen Mary Catholic Church, located in the outskirts of South Sudan's capital, Juba, so did the young and the old.
Message to my people in this lovely country is that we should live together. All right, we should stand together as one. We will succeed. We will win what we need to win. You understand? So this country, there is nothing we need. If there is peace, I think everybody will do what he wants to do for himself. You understand? Yeah. So my message to my people is that we should live in peace. Forgive one another. Forgive your brother. Forgive your sister. Even though you have which kind of problem with that person, try to forgive that person so that we live together. And we should remove that mentality of calling ourselves by our tribe. All right?
Yeah.
We are not living in South Sudan by our tribe. We are living in South Sudan as South Sudanese people. We should call ourselves we are South Sudanese. Mata salana na minyatu gibila.
The campaign aims to amplify the voices of ordinary South Sudanese, celebrating your contributions and advocating for your participation in all levels of decision making.
The World Health Organization's top official, Dr. Tedros, is concerned that the conflict in Sudan is further exacerbating an already challenging health and hunger situation. According to his statistics, the situation has increased the number of people at highest risk of hunger from 11.7 to 19.1 million people. This year, nearly 60 million people are food insecure across the Greater Horn of Africa, which includes 7 countries: Djibouti, Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia, South Sudan and Uganda. Unfortunately, the unrest makes it difficult for families to take advantage of immunizations to stop death from deadly diseases. And leaders from the Nigerian business community gathered in Johannesburg, South Africa for a breakfast meeting aimed at addressing some of the challenges confronting the Nigerian business community in South Africa. The gathering brought together prominent entrepreneurs, industry leaders and government officials. Key topics discussed during the meeting include trade facilitation, the visa challenge and strategies to enhance business relationships.
This breakfast meeting comes at a time when bilateral relations between Nigeria and South Africa have experienced their fair share of challenges, including xenophobic attacks on foreign nationals and strained trade relations. The Nigerian business community converged in Johannesburg with hopes of finding common ground.
I'm therefore highly impressed and proud that you have continued to present yourselves as worthy ambassadors of our dear country, Nigeria. As you individually grow in your various fields of endeavor and work tirelessly to add value to your host communities and country, I would like to assure you of the sustained support of the Nigerian government to ensure the successes of your businesses.
However, some of the paramount concerns of the Nigerian business community in South Africa is the recurring issue of visa and permits to trade.
Our challenges are huge and multifaceted. You know, first and foremost, when you come here as a doctor, you need to register with the Health Professional Council. For you to register with the Health Professional Council, there are a lot of red tapes that go into that. Number one, immigration. You know, number two is the Foreign Workforce Department. So the immigration department doesn't talk to the health department.
As a business person, especially in my field of work, which is construction, I do not see any problems because, as you well know, Nigeria doesn't produce quality building materials. Nigerians tend to bring in all their building materials from China. But that seems to be changing.
Regulation is a big issue on both sides, I think in different ways. A lot of countries tend to over-regulate, and often that's about making money, but it actually presents a blockage. And I think there's a lot of room for change and for addressing problems. But I think a lot of this has to happen at a more people-to-people level, and working with governments is important because that can move the needle in a way that the private sector can't on its own. So we are hopeful that maybe that's where we can actually pick this up and run with it.
His Excellency Ambassador Mohammed Manta says the visa issue is being addressed at a diplomatic level.
The Consular Migration Forum is a meeting of experts in the immigration and consular desk within the foreign ministries of South Africa, of Nigeria, and the Department of International Relations and Cooperation of South Africa. That committee has met twice already, and the third meeting is due in October this year.
Well-being of Nigerians. Well, generally, I think once in a while you have issues of police high-handedness. Members of our community bring reports to us, but generally, The Nigerian missions here, the High Commission in Pretoria, the Consulate in Joburg, have established a framework of engagement with the South African authorities. We meet monthly.
Hopefully, this meeting will truly pave the way to improve relations and enhance economic cooperation between the two nations. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Simos, Channels Television News.
Well, staying in South Africa, once seen only as a playful pastime, Pantsula was performed as a symbol of black South African culture and resistance to the apartheid regime. Tato Kofela first performed the dance routine in his childhood backyard. Now he is helping to revive the dance style and take it on to a global stage. Take a look.
Pantsula, the quick-stepping, energetic and syncopated dance started amongst black youth living in townships like Kofela's, Ketlong, under the apartheid government system of racial segregation, which ended in 1994. It became a vehicle for social and political expression and resistance. Pantsula's choreography, including movements mimicking sweeping, playing dice and saluting, meditated on black South Africans' everyday experiences and provided a code that performers could use to communicate in a language state police could not understand. It later enjoyed popularity among South Africans of different races, but waned somewhat as modern dance styles gained prominence. Now Kofela's dance troupe, via Ketlong, wants to drive a revival of the style and has taken the dance to the global stage with shows in France, the Netherlands and Portugal. Pantsula is more than just entertainment. It helped him stay out of trouble while growing up in Ketlong, where riots against the apartheid government were a regular feature of life.
They get bored, they get hooked to drugs and stuff and alcohol. So I'm trying to prevent into njengaleyo because there was a lot of crimes and even those drugs were there.
The 34-year-old dancer says the backyard rehearsals led by his brother meant he had no time to get involved in illegal activities. For other troupe members like 33-year-old Tulisile Binda, being able to express herself through the dance has provided a way to heal from life's challenges.
Dance in general, it has allowed me to explore what life is. It had allowed me to explore things that I face in life, and I'm able to actually express it via dance and Pantsula, obviously. And also dancing with feet, there's this thing about your feet being... There's some sort of healing that happens when you are dancing with your feet. So there's that thing that happens. So for me, it's been a healing journey.
Via Ketlong is now attracting attention at home. Letabo Zulu, a local audience member, believes its performances are a way to address societal problems.
We're in an African Renaissance. And so the whole world is looking to Africa to solve its problems. And so Via Ketlong is honestly, it's a platform to offer solutions to a lot of the ills that have happened because of the history that we've experienced as a globe, to be honest. So I think they are perfectly positioned to usher us into the newness that Africa needs.
I'm happy that it's being revived now, that the youth will take some cognizance and their township life and see how the township life goes. And it's something that they actually put their activism, their youth activism, and know where do they come from.
The world will be mesmerized, and in a nice way, and not to show and demonstrate on display that sadness that we are feeling because of the environment that we are coming from.
For some, an outlet for release. Others, an act of healing and entertainment. Pantsula is also a means of honest preoccupation and has become an avenue for gainful employment.
And finally on the program, it appears Christmas is starting early for John Lovich, a US-based former executive chef turned full-time gingerbread maker. He's already prepping for the holiday season with his freshly baked gingerbread houses that lie on the countertop ready to be assembled. His New York City kitchen smells of sugar and spice. Lovich squirts icing onto one of the house's roofs while his assistant, his 4-year-old daughter, pops on yellow, green and red gumdrops. Every year, Lovich rolls out over 2,000 gingerbread houses using a can of cooking spray. He goes through 2 or 3 KitchenAids, mixing up between 6,000 to 7,000 pounds of royal icing. And the basement of his house, which he shares with his wife and daughter, is now a gingerbread staging area.
There's a lot of difficulties that I face doing this year-round, and in the summer right now, it starts to get warm down here. You're not really feeling it today because it's just started to get hot outside, but here in about 30 days or so, this room is going to be sweltering. And I run 4 dehumidifiers around the clock down here and take anywhere from 10 to 30 gallons of water every day out of the air, because when it gets humid, the gingerbread falls apart. There's really no way to get in the mood for it when it's this hot outside. It's the 4th of July. Your kid's wanting to go to the water park. Your kid's wanting to go play with their friends. You're wanting to watch a baseball game. It's really not the easiest thing in the world to do. So it's more a matter of you just try to kind of stay good and positive and try to remember what's coming. I can tell you right now there's 134 days before I pack up my first van. And so you'll hear from people, friends, business colleagues, things of that throughout the year. Oh, the holidays are a long ways away. And you're like, yeah, they're 4.5 months. That's going to go like that. It's going to vaporize.
6 months, that's enough time for the gingerbread man to escape. Well, that's our show today. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker.